Here's what you're missing over at patreon.com/addressinggettysburg.
From the Gettysburg Museum of History Studios, you're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, patrons, and welcome to this episode of Addressing Gettysburg. And today we've got something I think you're going to find interesting, because I do. And it tends to be that when I find something interesting and we do a show about it, you guys go, wow, that was interesting. So I think I have a pretty good gauge as to what you might like. And then on the other hand, I don't. But this one I think you will. There's a book out by Peter Vermilyea called Litchfield County and the Civil War. And Pete is here to talk about it today. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be here.
You've been on the show before, though, when we were at CWI.
At CWI, that's right.
I remember you were very enthusiastic. You were the most excited person to come on the show.
So excited. I'm so excited today. I listen to every episode. I'm starstruck.
No one else has been so excited to be on this show, but I'm glad that you are. And by the way, let's show the viewing audience on Patreon here this beautiful bottle here. This is from it's Litchfield Distillery Bourbon Barrel Maple Syrup. It looks so pretty, I hesitate to open it. I mean, it's just a beautiful bottle. It's like nice glass, right?
It is.
Yeah.
You can refill it.
Yeah, but then you ruin it, with the wax seal on top. I mean, I will dip into it, of course, but but thank you for that. And
it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So Litchfield County, are you from there? Why?
I am.
Okay,
Litchfield
so that's
County,
the interest.
Born, bred. Came to college here for 4 years, lived in Maryland for 6 months, and moved back to Litchfield County.
What is that rubbing, making that noise there? You might want to move over just a tad so you're not rubbing on the table there. There
we go.
Yeah. I can move the camera to fix you there. Okay, there we go. All right, great. So that's your hometown there, or home.
It's my home in Northwest Connecticut.
And what, though, made you decide to dig into Litchfield County and the Civil War?
I'm going to keep this short because it's a long response. I'm a runner. I love to come to Gettysburg, run the battlefield. It was out this morning. I was out running past a cemetery near my house 15 or 20 years ago. It was right after Memorial Day. The Boy Scouts had put the flags on the graves.
Okay.
There's a tall obelisk, marble, wrapped with, a stone flag. That grave has 3 flags on it. So I stopped because that caught my interest. This was the grave of the Wadhams brothers. This is Edward, Henry, and Luman Wadhams. They were in 3 different regiments, killed in 3 different battles, 10 days apart from each other in May and June of 1864. I start poking into the story. They're killed at North Anna, Drury's Bluff, and Cold Harbor. The deacon of the Congregational Church in the town of Litchfield is sent to the family home to tell the family that one of the brothers has died. On his way back to the church, he stopped and told, you need to go back and tell the family because we just learned another brother had died. At Cold Harbor, 141 men of Litchfield County died in about an hour of fighting.
Wow. This
is not the June 3rd big assault, the famous one, the one that Grant says that he wished never had happened. This is June 1st. 141 men. And I was really interested in the question of how does a community deal with that kind of grief? How do you get past it? How do you move on? How do you make sense of it? And that's what led me to this. And the book actually is about the formation of the regiment, what became the 2nd Connecticut, the 19th Connecticut. So that's a little...
So just a jog or a run by a cemetery sparks the interest and it makes you want to go out and do this. Maybe I should start running. For many reasons, but
there's a lot of benefits.
Not to my needs.
But it's not running. It's being outside. It's poking around. It's being an explorer rather than a driver.
A consumer.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So you start digging into it. How how hard is it? I mean, like, if I want to write a book about the Battle of Gettysburg, that's not going to be very difficult. But there's resources all over the place. Right. You want to write a book about Litchfield County, Connecticut. I never heard of it until I got your book. And I was like, where the hell's that? Oh, Connecticut. And, I mean, how hard is it to find all of this information? I would imagine there is a historical society.
There's a wonderful historical society in Litchfield.
Okay.
I'm on the board of it, so it's a wonderful historical society. But it truly is that they really have a world-class research facility.
Oh, good.
They have a lot of information. But also, this is the time to be doing this kind of work, because of everything that technology has put at our fingertips.
I know.
So this kind of, Ancestry.com, newspapers.com, Fold 3 with the military records, the digitized newspapers. I could not have written this book without the newspapers. They're largely an untapped resource, the local newspapers.
Yeah.
The stories are incredible.
Right, and like you say, like newspapers.com it makes it so much easier.
It makes it so much easier. For me, doing this research, one of the really interesting things, I thought really the fun part, were the advertisements in the newspapers.
Oh, yeah.
They're incredible.
I love old advertisements. Not just in the newspapers, but like, painted on the sides of the buildings or on boulders on Culp's Hill.
Right? And then especially the ones for any kind of medicine. Like, Dr. McGillicuddy's whiz-bang pills, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And but what if you start poking at these Civil War newspapers, what jumps out at you is all the advertisement is in military language, right? March at the double quick to Sawyer's shoe store, to take advantage of the sale kind of stuff.
Right.
It's all couched in this military language that has swept these northern communities. And, one of the things I hope that people beyond Litchfield County will open up the book, because Litchfield County is a stand-in for the rest of the North in the summer of 1862.
Okay.
Right? So the stuff that's going on here is going on in every northern community. They're all dealing with these calls for men, for the Army.
So you dive into it. Now, you recommended that I read Chapter 8. So for those of you who have read the book, we're talking about Chapter 8. If you're reading the book, we're talking about Chapter 8. If you haven't gotten to Chapter 8, you might want to wait and listen to this episode when you start Chapter 9. But I thought it was a good pick on your part, because it was about medical exemptions. What was it? What is it called? The Army of Exempts.
The Army of Exempts.
Yes, and go into that a little bit there. The medical exemptions. How did medical exemptions work prior to the Civil War?
Yeah. So let's take a little bit of a step back. There had always been a requirement, going back to colonial days in New England, that men be members of the militia. Men of a certain age had to be members of the militia. And you could, through medical exemption, get out of the militia if you had lost a limb in a farming accident. You obviously were not going to serve in the militia. You went to your doctor. He gave you an exemption. You brought the exemption to the first selectman of the town, and they exempted you. So the doctor presents the certificate. You take that certificate, and it's the selectman of the town who actually exempt. That's been the system for 100 years plus, if it's 1862. In the summer of 1862, what's at the heart of this book is that there are 2 calls made for 300,000 men. There's the big call in July that produces so many of the units that are going to fight here at Gettysburg. And then there's the later call in August for another 300,000 men to serve for 9 months. So the first call is for 3-year volunteers, and the second call is for 9-month volunteers. So I'm thinking about the 151st Pennsylvania, the Stanners, Vermonters, all of those men here at Gettysburg whose terms are coming up.
Yeah.
They're all from that second call. Up until that second call, there was no need for a medical exemption or a medical certificate, because if you didn't want to fight, you just didn't volunteer.
Sure, that makes sense.
Right. When they pass the second call comes after a July 1862 Militia Act that allows for a draft. And this is not the 1863 draft that's going to lead to the riots. This is done at the state level, done within the communities. If you can't fill your rosters, you can draft men. And now there's a need to actually have a system for medical exemptions.
So let me stop you there because you mentioned draft.
Yeah.
And I kind of suspected this, but in the book you mentioned how I forget how you worded it, but basically like military conscription was expected or, in the air right now. But that's not federal because we're not going to see that until 63.
Not until 63.
Right. So this is a state, or is it state or county conscription?
So it's state conscription. Connecticut's an odd duck. It does not have county government. It's never had county government.
Okay.
Neither does Rhode Island. Those are the only two states. So everything's done by the town, which is kind of what made this project fun because every town's different. So what they're doing in the town of Litchfield, Connecticut's not necessarily what they're doing in the town of Plymouth, Connecticut, 10 miles away.
Okay.
So they start with the first call for 300,000 volunteers. At first, they're having a real tough time getting men to volunteer. And then two things turn the tide. One is the bounty money becomes enormous.
How much?
If you're in Litchfield County, Connecticut, $540.
Wow.
A year and a half or more of a salary. I have so many examples.
Why can't I find something that would pay me a year and a half salary in one fell swoop?
Well, right. There's a risk.
Sure.
And what I should say is there's so many accounts I came across of brothers who took the bounty money, of farmhands who went together, took the bounty money because they saw this as their opportunity. Right? Here was their opportunity to go get their own farm, to go get their own business, to pay off the debts that they had accrued. And so many of these stories end tragically.
Later on, I'm skipping way ahead here, but later on you talk about how when guys got their certificates of exemption, employers might pay them differently. I think one example was a very rich farmer, and he would pay a guy with a certificate 75 cents a day, while he would pay a guy without one $125, or I'm sorry, $1.25. I moved the decimal point, but
right, exactly.
But and one of the things that kept running through my head as I was reading this chapter was the differences and the similarities between then and now.
Yes.
I mean, on a certain level, human nature, we always say this on the show, does not change. Doesn't matter what the technology is, what the time, the era is, human nature is still pretty much, forgive me, shitty. And so we see a lot of the same things there. But like, there are big differences, and I don't want to skip ahead yet. I want to get up to the exemptions here.
Sure.
So let's
so let me finish this point.
There, yeah.
So the first thing that gets men to pull into that are the bounty money. A colleague of mine said, "Are you saying these men were mercenaries? That's why they fought?" And I thought, it's an interesting question. No, they're not mercenaries, because if the Confederates had offered them twice as much to join the Confederate Army, they wouldn't have done that.
Right.
What's going on is the money is allowing them to act on their patriotic impulses. They want to join the Army. They haven't been able to. In many cases, they want to join the Army. They haven't been able to because of finances. They have a wife. They have kids. They have to work to support their father's farm.
Yeah.
And now the money has become enough, and they're throwing up. There's other money too. Right? There's aid to women and children, which I write about, and I thought that was also fascinating how that worked. If you had, they would give $6 a month to the wife, $6 for each kid up to 2 kids, so you could $18. But if you deserted, they lost that money. Right. So the financial aspect is really interesting. But the other thing, and this goes back to your point, the other thing that fills those 3-year regiments is the fear of a draft.
Okay.
Because the men are led to believe that if they are drafted, 1, they're not going to have any bounty money. 2, they're going to be put into whatever unit needs.
Listen to the rest of this interview and dozens like it. Support the show and get early access to special episodes, early and discounted ticket sales, and more. The second lieutenant level and above gets access to all monthly Patreon episodes. So please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg, choose a tier, and join. And I thank you in advance.